Hi guys, it's Karl here again from Future Sounds, back with another guitar tutorial today, this time for Paolo Nutini's new song Scream, aka Funk Your Life Up. Hope you like it, and let's get started. So the verse, like all the verses in this tune, is based around a palm muting pattern of a 16th note. So I'll play it for you first, and then we'll break it down and look what it's actually composed of. So it sounds like this: 3, 4. So I should point out first of all we need some palm muting in here, and that's really key to this sound for the verses here. So for those of you who don't know palm muting, it's basically placing this fatty part, the fleshy part of your hand here on the bridge of the strings, just resting slightly. So instead of the notes ringing out, you get that nice dead muting type sound. So what we have here is the 7th fret on the D string and the 9th fret on the D string. And then to end the phrase in the second bar, we have the 7th fret on the G string. So bar 1 starts with a hammer on from the 7th to the 9th. And then we play straight 16ths for the rest of the phrase. So it sounds like this. And then bar 2, similar thing, but at the end of the bar, we're going to come up to the G string on that 7th fret, which will sound like this. And again, the whole thing together. Okay, and that's the pattern for the first verse. That repeats 4 times, and then we're into the chorus. So now we have the chorus, and the chorus is split into 2 guitar parts. So first of all, we're going to look at guitar 1, which is playing the chords, and then guitar 2 is doing a cool sort of sliding country sixths thing. So first of all then, guitar 1. The chords that we have here are a B major, we have an F sharp major, A major, and then an E major to finish off as well. So again, it's a 2-bar phrase here, and we're using a split bar, so each of the chords has 2 beats. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the rhythm we're working with here. And again, it's just 1 strum on the right hand for each of those chords, just 1 strum and let it ring. So seeing him play it live and the way it sounds on the record, he's not voicing these chords as these full bar chords like this. He's actually doing it more of a split thing, like Hendrix kind of style, thumb over the top, and then 3 notes to the middle of the chords. So the B would look like that. You'd have the F sharp down there, similar, then the A, and then finally he plays the E as just an open chord. If you really wanted to, you could come up here and play a higher voicing of it on the 7th fret and the 9th fret, but if you want to sound close enough to the record, that opening at the bottom there. So if you can't do the thumb over the top, don't worry, you can play it as those bar chords and you'll get a pretty similar sound, but if you want to be spot on, go for that thumb over the top there. So we'll just play it to see how it sounds, the whole thing. It's like this. So we've got 3, 4. That's the first part of the chorus. And then we go back to that verse idea, back on our 7th and our 9th fret on the D string, and introduce that muting pattern again, again with alternative picking to make it easy for you, which will sound like this. So that's the second 2 bars of the chorus. So the whole thing will sound like this. And then it'll go into the second verse. So the second guitar part is a higher one. It's playing sort of more of a country thing, and it's starting up here, which is covering over that first B chord. So we're on the G string on the 8th fret, and then with my first finger I'm playing the E string on the 7th fret, and I'm sliding into that from a tone below. Then we're coming down to the 3rd fret on the G string and the 2nd fret on a high E, again with a little slide. down to the F sharp. Then we're going to cover that A chord. So again, we're sliding in on the G string. This time the 6th fret, and we got our high E on the 5th fret. With a little slide in there. So those three. And then the last time, to cover that E chord, instead of another sliding idea, it comes all the way up to our 13th fret. So we're playing this kind of idea. I'll play that again for you. So that's on the G string on the 13th fret, and we're coming up to the 12th on the high E, down to the 10th, and then down to the B string on our 12th fret as well. And that covers over the E major chord. I should point out that on the B and on the A, those little slides, he adds in a little hammer-on, 2 hammer-ons actually, and it's quite quick. Sounds like this. So we're hammering from the 7th fret up onto our 8th, and we're doing it twice. And then top string. The F sharp is just a slide, and then he does that same hammer-on thing for the A, and then we have that nice little phrase over the E there. So I'll just play that whole part for you. The second guitar part will sound like this. Okay, and then the 2 guitar parts for the chorus, so into the second verse. So now we've reached the second verse, and this is really, really similar to the first verse. It's based around that same 16th note muted pattern that we had in the first time, but there's one slight variation. So we have, it's still a 2-bar phrase, and the first bar is still the same as it was in the first, that muted 16th notes, which sounds like this. And then in the second bar, right at the end, instead of having on our G string at the 7th fret, instead of having 2 muted strokes there, and then back to that B, we actually just have one note ringing out, and it's bent slightly from that minor third up what would be a semitone to that major third. So it sounds like this. Okay, so that's the one variation in that pattern. That happens twice round. And then the third time, the guitar player plays the nice little licks, and this sounds like this. One more time. So we're using the same notes, we're using the 7th fret on the D string up to the 9th fret of the D string, coming down to the 9th fret of the G, and the 7th fret of the G string as well. And we're still getting that little minor to major third bend on the 7th fret there. That happens the third time round, so we get it sounds like this all together. And then the third time, fourth time, and then we're back into the chorus again, which is exactly the same, both parts, guitar 1 and guitar 2, as it was the first time the chorus came round. Okay, so we'll head into the third verse. So now we have verse 3, and verse 3 is split into 2 guitar parts again. Guitar 1 is playing that same 16th note muted pattern that it does in verse 2. So we have our muted notes between 7th and 9th, and it's with the bend, the slight semitone bend on the 7th fret on the G string, as opposed to those 2 muted strokes. So just like the second verse. And then we have a new part that comes in. So this part's a syncopated 8th note type of part, and I'd recommend you could play this 2 different ways. You could play it with the pick, or you could go sort of fingers on it and have a more of a pulling type sound, and I quite like that for this part. It helps keep it really short and sharp, and really stylistic, you know, as per the record. So the actual part sounds like this. It's all offbeat. Sounds a bit like this. So we got. that's all the part is. So we have 2 double stops here. The first, we have using my third finger on the 3rd string on the 11th fret, and my second finger on the B string on the 10th fret. First sound. And then the second one that we only stay on very briefly is a hammer on from this one to the first. And that I'm using my first finger on my 9th fret on the G string. And I'm using my second finger on the B string on the 10th fret. So that's the first shape. And there's our second. So that part again sounds like this. And it starts on the offbeat of 1. So we have... And again, you can see me, I'm pulling the strings there. Again, I like that sound. I think it keeps it nice and short and sharp. The temptation with the pick is that you add in loads of extra strumming and dead notes, which sort of clutters up the part in the context of the band part. But when you're playing on your own, that might be a cool sound for you. So I'll play that part one more time just to show that. It sounds like this. So that happens over that muted part. And that gets repeated 6 times. And then we're back into the chorus, which again is the same as the 2 previous to it. So now we have chorus 4 and 5. It's a double chorus, sort of back to back. The actual chord part itself is still the 2 parts, still those same chords that we looked at earlier, with the same sort of country part going over the top. The only thing that's different about these 2 choruses is how they end. So after we have those 2 bars of chords, we then come back to that repeated sort of muted B idea that we had earlier on. The first bar is exactly the same both times round, but the second time, instead of having that little bend sort of idea, there's a new lick that's introduced, and the guitar doubles the vocal line. And it sounds a bit like this. So what we're doing there, again, you might have noticed I'm using my 2 fingers to pull these double stops again. It keeps it nice and short, and I think it fits in with the vocal really nicely. But you could, by all means, play it with a pick as well. So the notes we're actually playing there, we're playing all double stops. So the first one is on our 9th fret on the G string and the B. And then we go down to our 7th fret, again on the same 2 strings. And we finish up with that single note on B there. And the other thing you really need to watch out for is that first double stop is bent ever so slightly, both notes. So it's not quite up the semitone, but it's getting towards that. And that happens in the second bar of both times of chorus 4 and chorus 5. And then we're into the breakdown, which the guitar doesn't play in. So now we're at the final chorus just to round out this tune. And it's very similar to what we've had before. You know, the same chords are running through this section. The only difference here is that there's more emphasis on those chords. The sound is slightly dirtier. And we don't have the country type licks happening over the top anymore. And the chorus ends, the tune ends back on an idea that we talked about earlier, is this double stop type lick that's doubling the vocals. It happens a few times. And that's doubling the vocals there. So by all means play that. But most of the licks that are in this tune, and there's quite a few more than we have time to go into here, but they're all coming from one scale. They're all coming from the B minor pentatonic scale. So if you know that scale, you can play any kind of licks you want, be it double stops, be it more single note type things. It's all going to fit. It's all going to be very stylistic, that bluesy type soul kind of sound. So have fun, experiment. You know, you don't have to stick to the things that are on there, but by all means work with the licks that we've covered today as a starting point.